You know, making a Christmas film is hard. Well, it's not, but making a Christmas film good is hard. Christmas has been around for hundreds of years, and movies have been around for over a century, and yet we have max 20 good Christmas films? A lot of them are awful, very few are exceptional and noteworthy, but most of them are average and forgettable. I mean, how many films have you seen over the years that come out around Christmas time? You watch them and think, oh, that was alright, and then never watch them again. It happens so often, and that's why people rely on old faithful Christmas movies to keep them entertained during the holiday season. Now, I did recently do a video on why there are no more Christmas classics, and that is something to do with it. I also did a video on great alternative Christmas films, which I'd recommend watching if you want something aside from the typical classics. But when Christmas films are excellent, they truly are excellent. And one of those excellent films is Love Actually, which is the one I'm going to be talking about today. I do truly believe with my whole crooked and cold heart, this is the greatest Christmas movie of all time. Now, it truly was a toss-up between this and The Holiday, but I think this is just better executed. So let's get into why this movie is so special. Well, for one, the opening. This film opens with a bunch of random people hugging and greeting each other at the airport whilst we get some narration about how love is everywhere. Maybe not in the levels of newsworthy amounts, but it is there and will always be. See, the brilliance starts here because they have none of the cast in the opening segment. It is genuinely just people, which has a greater impact than if they had hired actors. It feels more real. It relays the message they're trying to convince you of in a more effective way because it doesn't feel written. It doesn't feel glamorous or like a fairy tale. It's just people seeing people they love after an extended period of absence. There is few greater forms of love and interaction than that. But the message that love is everywhere, even in the little moments, especially in the little moments, courses through this film's veins. My girlfriend said to me after our most recent watch of the film that isn't it a huge coincidence that all these people know each other somehow and all these events tie together how they do? Which, at first glance, it may seem that way, but it isn't. See, the movie isn't tying together all these fantastical stories in a spiderweb of coincidence and happenstance. It's finding a small bubble of society, a few stories surrounding each other with a bit of connective tissue in the means of people, and telling those simple but effective stories. The idea is that this film just so happens to surround these people within this social 6 degrees of separation group kind of storytelling, but it could just as easily be about another group of people easily connected to each other from anywhere. Because again, the meaning of the film is that love is everywhere, so one great love story is only one person away from another. Like, say your parents' love story and your own and your friends and their sisters don't all feel coincidental, do they? Because they're not. They're all happening separately at the same time, with small pieces of connectivity linking them together in the form of you and your friend and siblings and so on. It's a gorgeous and elegant way to tell multiple stories at once that feel coincidental, but that's the point. They accomplish telling all these stories without it feeling bloated and complicated too, because these stories are not complex. There aren't tons of layers in each of them. They're fairly simple stories with a bit of subtext in each of them. The themes of the film permeate through every story at some point, and every story is relevant because it tells a different type of love story, whether that be finding, maintaining, destroying, preventing, longing, adventuring, and reflecting, but also non-romantic relationships in siblings, workplace, parenting, step-parenting, and simply friendship. Now, since it is so full of individual tales, some are better than others and some are more fleshed out, much greater than others. Say for instance, John and Judy's story. Very simple and very little time awarded to it. They meet on a porn shoot, they conversate a little, they go for a drink, and they get engaged at the very end at the time jump. It's small, concise, and speaks to how love can be simple and found in the most peculiar and unnatural of places. But then take David and Natalie's story. The Prime Minister moves into number 10 Downing, meets his staff, he has a meet cute, they conversate, then he feels betrayed, she feels rejected, he tries to move on, he can't, he finds her, they reconcile, they go to a play and they kiss. Now, by the end, it's a much less eventful story. One ended in an engagement and one ended with a first kiss. But David and Natalie's story is filled with much more time and effort. The characters are much more fleshed out and real, so though they are both stories of people finding love at work, one feels much greater than the other. But in the end, they both play a significant part of driving home that message individually. To look at some other stories, we have Karen and Harry, probably the best story in the film, in no small part thanks to Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson, who are just crushing it, but their story is one of betrayal. Of him having a workplace romance with a woman much younger than his wife and crushing her without him even really grasping the weight of his actions. This story also has the funniest scene in the film where they casually introduce comedy legend Rowan Atkinson as Harry attempts to buy a gift for his mistress. Another story entails Daniel and his stepson Sam, wherein Daniel tries to help Sam get the girl of his dreams as they both mourn for a person that connected them both, a wife and a mother. He learns to truly be a parent and what that means as Sam learns what it's like to first discover love. They are both new to something, both new to their respective forms of love and navigating them successfully with their bumps to go with. The first story we're introduced to though is between Billy Mack and his manager Joe. Now at first this doesn't seem like a love story because it's mostly about an old pop star trying to get a Christmas #1 with an awful song even he hates, which, you know, he crassly goes through interviews and appearances which endears the public to help him on his mission, and by the end he realizes the only thing he truly cares for is his manager, who has always been there for him even before the Christmas #1 and fame. Billy's admittance of his love for Joe is one of the nicest moments this movie has to offer, and it's just two middle-aged men in a flat together. But real quick, I hate the Andrew Lincoln and Keira Knightley storyline. It's one of the most fucked up ones. He falls in love with his best friend's girlfriend, and instead of just firming it and being cordial, he's rude and dismissive of her even though she hasn't done anything wrong. Then in the end he confesses his love whilst his best friend is upstairs completely oblivious, and then she fucking kisses him and it's supposed to be this big romantic moment. No, you're both awful people and Peter deserves better in a wife and a best friend. The film initially wants you to believe that Mark is in love with Peter, and then you get the reveal he's actually in love with Juliet, but in honesty I wish the film didn't try to be clever and just did the obvious thing and actually made him in love with Peter. I think it would have been a greater display of the complexity of love. One, being in love with your best friend, but also LGBTQ+ love and navigating that, possibly lifelong crush getting married, knowing you'll never have a chance. That would have been a much greater plot point in my opinion, but here we are. We can't have gay people in our 2000s romantic comedy now, can we? But that aside, this film is full of great moments, beautiful beginnings and endings, but one of the most standout things about this whole film is the cast. This might just be the most stacked cast of all time. Now, more so if you're a British viewer, since I guess the Gavin and Stacey actors and the EastEnders actors showing up won't mean much to you at all, but when you consider how many fantastic actors there are in this film and where they would all go on to and where they have been, like we have actors from Starship Troopers, Gavin and Stacey, EastEnders, Harry Potter, Lost, The Walking Dead, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Truman Show, The Hobbit, Maze Runner, Star Wars and the MCU. The fact that all these niche British shows have something in common with the biggest film franchises of all time and biggest TV shows is pretty insane. Having Joanna Page in the same film as Martin Freeman or Marty McCutcheon in the same film as Andrew Lincoln is insane. Not only are they in the same film, but they all play similarly important roles. Everybody does a good job, and it turns this entire film into one of the most beautiful love stories ever told. Now yes, because it is the mid-2000s, some of it hasn't aged quite that well, like the transvestite joke or the constant gay jokes or the fact that they think this woman is fat and they bring it up constantly. But relative to most of the 2000s, it's held up extraordinarily well. Now apart from the cast, a lot of this film is heavily leaning on the British sensibilities and references that it could easily alienate wider audiences, and yet it doesn't. The standout British humour or the dialect could easily alienate some audiences, and yet it doesn't. The mass appeal of this film is truly felt, and it's seen with how repeatedly this movie is talked about every year worldwide. Now we spoke about why all this makes it a brilliant rom-com and a great movie in general, but why does any of this make it the greatest Christmas film of all time? Well, to me, the themes of Christmas are getting together with loved ones, love, gift giving, caring, laughter, and being where you want to be with who you want to be with, despite whatever circumstances try to prevent you from doing so. This film does all that and more than. Truth be told, I didn't like this movie for a great portion of my life, and then last year I watched it and it just clicked, and since I've seen it a number of times, each time finding something new to appreciate, another layer of simplicity to obsess over. Now I could go on and on about every single little detail and every romance story and every relationship put into this film, but that would require a lot of time that I don't have and a lot more attention of yours that I don't deserve. So this year, if you want to feel whole, feel crushed and loved all at the same time, watch Love Actually. But if you don't and you want to watch something else, I guess the most important thing is, as always, keep watching movies.